So we're ready to start. My name is Viktor Kipiani. I'm the chair for Geocase, Georgian-based think tank. And it's my pleasure to start this event, which is on the Black Sea region and on the Black Sea security. I welcome everyone who has joined us either in Georgia or outside of Georgia. So you're welcome. The time frame for this seminar, for this online, is 1 hour, so I very much rely on your patience and very much hope that our presentations and our discussions would be lively, would be productive, and would be very enjoyable. Especially taking into account that we have a special panel. And to start with, we have a really truly special guest who is Mr. Coffey. I think no need to present to the Georgian audience. He's not just the director of the Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies of the Heritage Foundation, but he's an excellent scholar. He's an excellent expert, whose judgment I trust, with complete confidence. And most importantly, for me as for a Georgian, he's a good friend of this country, the one who appreciates, what democracy means, what the liberty means, what the rule of law means. So, except of Mr. Coffey's participation, we have His Excellency Ambassador Nikoloz Rtveliashvili. Thank you, Mr. Rtveliashvili, for joining the panel. We expect a very interesting insight from your side. And last but not least, we have my colleague, who is a research fellow at Geocase, Dr. Khatuna Burkadze, who would also explore the issue of Georgia vis-a-vis the North Atlantic Alliance. And we very much look forward, Khatuna, to hearing on your interesting views and assessments. So, Black Sea, it's not surprising that we picked up, this topic. It's quite natural for us, for Georgians, because it's our home. It's our home region. But on top of our location, Black Sea is really among very unique places because it's the intersection of clash of various interests by major global and regional players. It's also at the same time the platform for our potential growth, and it's also the source of the security challenges. That's the region, where we're plugging into the world economy. That's the region, how we're plugging into the world geopolitics. So besides of these very fancy connotations, Black Sea is the eastern flank of the NATO. The eastern flank, which in my view, probably some would disagree, shows some flaws or weakness, to put it diplomatically. And more importantly, Black Sea for the alliance and for the overall Western security is the place where it combines two very key ingredients. One is the Eastern European security, and the second one is the Middle East security. So in those statements, I try to convey my key messages to underline, to emphasize the importance and the significance of stability, of the order, and of the proper defense of this country and maintenance of the proper interests of the Western Alliance in the Black Sea region. So without further ado and mindful of time, I would give a floor to Luke. Luke, please, you have a go ahead. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you, Victor, for organizing this, and thank you to Geocase for hosting it. And Victor, I should have you do all of my introductions. That was a very kind and generous introduction, and I appreciate it. So thank you for that. I wanted to focus on America's interests in the Black Sea, coming from a U.S. point of view, and then discuss a few ideas about how we can boost this presence in the Black Sea, not just the United States, but also through NATO and our partners in the region. As you said, Victor, the Black Sea is this place where so many different powers and interests converge. And then on top of this, competing interests, you have the economics of the region, regional trade, oil and gas pipelines, fiber optic cables, the transportation of oil out of the Black Sea to global markets. So you have all of this converging on on what, as you described as NATO's periphery, on NATO's southeastern flank, and that is why policymakers need to keep an eye on the region. Now, for the United States, I think there are three main interests in the Black Sea. The first one is America's obligations under the 1949 North Atlantic Treaty. America is obligated to defend Bulgaria and Romania in the same way that it would have to defend Boston and Rhode Island, right? So it is in America's interest that it maintains a robust presence, it stays active in the region, because three of the Black Sea powers, Bulgaria, Romania, and Turkey, are in NATO, and the US has obligations to that. Secondly, it's because of the American commitment to a Europe that's whole, free, and at peace. And this is where Ukraine and Georgia comes into play in terms of America's interests. It is in America's interest that this region remains stable and secure, that people follow international norms and international law. And the Black Sea, unfortunately, is a zone of foreign occupation in many cases when you consider Crimea and Abkhazia. And with these foreign occupations come gross human rights violations as it pertains to freedom of the media, freedom of religion, freedom of speech and assembly. And then, of course, the case with the IDPs in Georgia coming from Abkhazia. These issues matter to the United States, and the United States needs to continue to play a role to help both Georgia and Ukraine continue down the Euro-Atlantic path to fully join the Euro-Atlantic community in a formal sense. I always say informally, at least. Georgia and Ukraine are in the Euro-Atlantic community, but when we talk about institutions, there's still more work to be done. And I highlight these five countries, Bulgaria, Romania, Turkey, Georgia, and Ukraine, because these five countries alone, for example, make up 1/3 of all European forces in Afghanistan, for example. So these countries have shown a commitment to Euro-Atlantic stability and security. They've been willing to deploy troops for NATO operations. So the US has an interest to cultivate the relationship with the countries in the region and to work with the countries in the region. And then the third interest for the United States is, as it was outlined in the national security strategy of the US, we are back in an era of big power competition. And Russia is the big power in the Black Sea region. And Russia and the United States are constantly competing against one another for influence and for strategy and trying to promote each other's agendas in the region. And Russia uses the Black Sea as a springboard to expand and promote its influence and policies well beyond the Black Sea. So the US has to be acutely aware of this factor, that for Russia, it's just not about the economics of the Black Sea. It's just not about the occupations of Crimea and Abkhazia and the war in Donbass. It's not about the fact that about every 10 minutes or so, there's an oil tanker that transits the Bosphorus out to bring oil, Russian oil or Kazakh oil that goes through Russia to global markets. For Russia, the Black Sea is about more than the Black Sea. This is the launch pad for operations in Syria. This is the launch pad for operations in Libya. The Black Sea is actually an important springboard or launch pad for Russia to project military power and influence in the heart of the Eurasian landmass to the Caspian. we Americans don't look at the map very closely and notice that the Sea of Azov is where the connects the Volga-Don. The Volga-Don Canal connects the Caspian Sea with the Sea of Azov, and of course the Black Sea. And Russia in the past 18 months has shown the ability to move warships between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea using this canal. So for Russia, the Black Sea is actually much more than just the Black Sea as a region. It's a way to project Russian power and influence well beyond the region. So what can we do about this? What should NATO do? What should the US do? Well, the US and NATO, in the most basic sense, needs to increase its presence in the Black Sea, its maritime presence. Because of the limits of the 1936 Montreux Convention, non-Black Sea powers are limited by size and by the number of days they can spend in the Black Sea. This creates problems, but really it's the lack of political will to get more Navy assets into the Black Sea. If NATO countries wanted to do it, they could do it. We saw a spike in NATO presence in the Black Sea back in 2015 and 2016. And then since then, they've gone down and they're slowly starting to rise again, but they need to rise faster. We need to get more maritime assets in the Black Sea for longer. And a lot of that, like I said, is down to political will. We need to focus more on the land and air component of the Black Sea. For too long, we have been focused on the maritime component, the maritime domain, and this is important, but we need to make sure that we have the proper force structure in the region for deterrence on the land and for deterrence in the air. The US and NATO should also help the countries of the Black Sea that are in NATO or aspire to be part of NATO to improve their maritime capabilities. The most enduring way to ensure that NATO has stability, brings stability to the region and there's a presence in the region is for the countries of the region to be able to do more. So the US should work with Romania and Bulgaria and Turkey and Georgia and Ukraine to identify key capabilities that need to be filled and help establish a long-term process to help these countries build their maritime capabilities up in the Black Sea. Ways that we could do this to improving the NATO presence in the Black Sea might include creating a Black Sea rotational force. This is something I proposed in the past. It could be modeled off the very successful Baltic air policing mission, where countries set up and they agree in advance when they will send ships into the Black Sea. I think this would help at least focus the energy and focus the minds of NATO policymakers, and it would really force the NATO members to commit to a presence in the Black Sea. Another way is to keep Georgia and Ukraine firmly on the path to NATO membership. Both of these countries are often linked, coupled together in the same basket because of the 2008 Bucharest summit. Since Bucharest, I would say the two countries have taken different paths, and I don't think they should be linked anymore. I think the reality, because of what happened before Yanukovych left Ukraine, Georgia has advanced on towards Euro-Atlantic membership. Now Ukraine's trying to catch up, and they're doing a great job, but they're still catching up to where Georgia is now. So we need to treat these as two separate cases, but we need to help both of them continue down the Euro-Atlantic path. And then finally, one further way to have the NATO flag flying in the region and to show NATO's commitment to Georgia and to improve NATO's presence in Georgia is something I proposed a while ago, and that is establishing a center of excellence for Black Sea security in Georgia. Could be somewhere in the Black Sea like Batumi. And the center of excellence could be a place where NATO countries and partner countries could gather. Doesn't have to be a very big organization, but have some regional experts that could get together and work out how to confront some of the challenges that are unique to the Black Sea. This could be modeled off the other centers of excellence that we have throughout NATO countries, like the Cyber Center of Excellence in Estonia, for example. And there is no precedent for a non-NATO country to have be home to a NATO certified center of excellence. But as far as I could tell during my research, there's no legal obstacle either. It's a matter of political will. So this is an opportunity to have an institution inside Georgia flying another way to fly a NATO flag, focusing on a challenge that is not only important to Georgia, but also important to NATO as an alliance. So those are just some ideas. I have others. I could go into detail on some of the ideas I've just mentioned if anyone's interested. But Victor, I think I'll stop there and turn over the floor to the next speaker.
Thank you. Actually, you did not let down the Georgian audience, because even now you managed to have your own say instead of, setting forth the Georgian sort of, course of action. Because I very much liked your idea when you opined on the period since Bucharest summit. And you made, I think, in my view, very crucial and very correct statement, to what extent Ukraine and Georgia should be linked down the path. That's the fundamental issue. I think it should be explored more in depth. So thank you so much indeed, alongside with other practical measures or actions which you have suggested. It was very delighted, to hear your views. So may I go to Ambassador Rtveliashvili, and Mr. Rtveliashvili, your turn, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Was really very interesting, Mr. Coffey, and your ideas are really useful for the future developments. Let me start with more from the beginning, let's say so. So, of course, Black Sea region, it's my opinion, and probably you agree, is indispensable part of Euro-Atlantic security. With its 3 littoral states of NATO members, and the 2 of them you already mentioned are also EU members. So at the same time, region, and of course aspirant countries, I mean Georgia and Ukraine. And at the same time, the region connects to Mediterranean and Greater Middle East, as well as to the Caspian Basin and Central Asia. So it's quite comprehensive. During the Cold War era, Black Sea was divided between Turkey as a NATO member and former Soviet Union and its allies from the Warsaw Pact from the other side. So the security in the Black Sea was based on balance of power. And that was clear to everyone that here 2 forces are separating their power over the region. But after Cold War, and after several waves of enlargement and dissolution of NATO enlargement, and EU enlargement and dissolution of Soviet Union, the balance of power in the Black Sea was changed. Along with Republic of Turkey appeared 2 more NATO members, which at the same time are European Union members. Their security is guaranteed by the Washington Treaty and NATO capabilities, and more coastal part is now controlled by the NATO member state than it was before. At that time, Warsaw Pact was the dominant, in coastal meaning, let's say so. So here I want to mention importance of large reserve or hydrocarbon resources of the Caspian Sea that are playing significant role in shaping security environment, not only Caspian Basin, but also Black Sea region as a part of the energy corridor connecting Central Asia with European Union. And all conflicts on post-Soviet territory are located in this region, in Black Sea region. Russia's aggressive actions vis-à-vis the regional countries pose threats not to only those countries, but also to the whole Euro-Atlantic security. Moscow aims reasserting so-called zones of its privileged interests, you know that, in the Eurasian arena, primarily in its immediate neighborhood of the former Soviet countries. In this context, the Black Sea states have been particularly targeted by Russia, which has been using so-called hybrid war tactics, even starting from 90s, a combination of political pressure, economic, energies. At that time, there were no cyber attacks, but today we have that. Massive disinformation campaign, and finally, military aggression. As a result, Russia's expansionism, the large parts of the Black Sea region have become gray zones, which are beyond the control of central authorities and at the same time lack credible international monitoring mechanisms. The goal of Moscow, probably you know quite well, but I want to say that, is to limit foreign policy choices of the regional states, impede their cooperation and integration with European and Euro-Atlantic institutions, and reduce them to the status of its satellite state. In fact, Russia has a stake in all prolonged or newly emerged conflicts in the region and possesses capabilities to escalate or de-escalate them at will. It is not in Moscow's interest to achieve the lasting solution of this conflict, as they are an effective mechanism to influence foreign and domestic policies of the affected countries. The military aggression against Georgia revealed remarkable flaws in the technological, strategic and practical preparedness of the Russian armed forces. And Russian officials have acknowledged that. And after the end of the active phase of the military hostilities, immediately they started to massively reform and modernize its armed forces. And this created a new balance of power in the region. This change was especially noticed in Syria, where the Russian military involvement led to significant changes on the ground. Let me skip some very well-known facts. Therefore, in these territories, there is no effective governance, I mean, gray zones, rule of law. Gaining from this reality, the organized crime is actively using these territories for engaging in serious criminal activities, such as trade of weapons, radioactive materials, drugs. And Russian occupation forces, they are preventing the international organizations to enter the occupied territories and carry out monitoring of this situation. Georgia, on its own, continues to pursue a balanced and pragmatic policy towards Russian Federation, trying to solve all problems through peaceful means. And you know that we have this Geneva process and bilateral format, so-called Abashidze-Karasin format. As well as we are allocating a lot of resources and efforts to reach out to population on the occupied territories. Now let's go to NATO. And first of all, I want to single out Georgia and Ukraine in this connection. So in April 2019, NATO agreed to give to Georgia a special package of cooperation. This is enhanced opportunity partners package together with Australia, Jordan, Finland, and Sweden, as well as Ukraine also joined this just recently in the middle of June. And NATO is actively helping Georgia and Ukraine to develop its capabilities as on sea as well as on the land. So, you mentioned Montreux Convention. Of course, it has strict restrictions, let's say so, for the foreign ships and vessels regarding their size, length, and so on. Nevertheless, during the 2018, NATO Navy units spent in the Black Sea more than 120 hours, of course, changing the vessel. And first time in the history, the American flagship, Mount Whitney, in 2008 during Russia-Georgia war, entered Black Sea region and visited Port Potty, bringing humanitarian assistance. By the way, potable water, which is in Georgia in a lot of amount, let's say so. So this act brought new dimension of the US Navy operations in Black Sea. Let me say a few words about EU. EU is providing soft security to Ukraine and Georgia, as well as to Moldova, because all we have this association treaties with the European Union, as well as comprehensive free trade area agreements. And of course, this creates favorable climate for the developing trade and businesses in this region. That means that interests of those countries who are involved are rising. Now I'll say a few words about the US interests. You explained already, in my opinion, is that the US is the closest strategic partner of almost all Black Sea regional countries except Russia. As for Georgia, you know that we have this strategic partnership, which covers many aspects of our relations, and of course, most important, this security field. In my opinion, as I said, the interests, US interests in the Black region are stability and democratization, strategic location in terms of energy security, as well as transport corridor of the Caspian energy resources, bridge to the other regions, I mean, wider Black Sea area, Mediterranean, Middle East, and front line of combating weapons of mass destruction, WMD proliferation, international terrorism, illegal immigration, and narcotics. And now I want to also mention Turkey too. It's also a very important player, I mean, regional player within the Black Sea area, not only. It plays significant role in the fight against international terrorism and is key partner of EU in the management of the migration flows. Security and stability of Turkey is affected by the processes which take place in Mediterranean region and Middle East. Peace and stability of these regions also will have positive impact on the security in the Black Sea area. Turkey actively supports a NATO membership bid to Georgia and is enhancing military cooperation with Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Azerbaijan. Such a cooperation is very important. It brings stability and security, especially if we mention that we have already very important pipelines, I mean, oil pipelines, Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan, gas pipeline, Baku-Tbilisi-Erzurum. In addition, if Trans-Anatolian gas pipeline and Trans-Adriatic pipeline projects will be on the ground. So it means that Turkey is very important in this case. What is for future? I think very important is to continue the enlargement process of NATO and to develop our, I mean, Georgia's and Ukraine's relations with NATO on much more higher level. This will create definitely stability in the Black Sea region, and in this case the Russian threat will be not that influential on the processes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you for your insight. And by the way, just my minor comment before we proceed to Khatuna's speech, that we're quite actively followed, and not just in terms of quantity, but in terms of viewers. I very much welcome the comment which was just made by the President of Georgia with regard to our event. Look, it goes to your comment about starting up the idea of Center of Excellence in Georgia. So her comment, Her Excellency made a comment that she has proposed the idea of Center of Excellence in Batumi to NATO's authorities 1 year ago. Hope we can push it forward. So actually, we're not just theorizing now, but we're sort of speaking about some practical modalities, you know, which is of course a welcome sign. So thank you. And Khatuna, please, your turn to give us an update where we stand for now and what's the status. Thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting me as a speaker for this online discussion. I would like to speak about dynamics and achievements of NATO-Georgia cooperation. In recent years, Georgia aspires to become a member state of the alliance. In years, through support of international partners, Georgia has made reforms in the areas of democracy, economy, security, and defense. Overall, annually, the NATO headquarters positively evaluates the implementation process of the Georgian annual national program. Currently, Georgia reaffirms its determination to achieve NATO membership as the top foreign and security policy priority that is backed by strong public support. I would like to emphasize the constitutional amendments of 2017-2018. According to the Constitution of Georgia, based on these amendments, the Constitution manifests Georgia's historic choice to become a member state of the alliance. And according to these changes, all constitutional bodies should take an appropriate measures in order to promote Georgia's full integration in NATO. When we talk about the dynamics of NATO-Georgia cooperation, I would like to highlight the substantial NATO-Georgia package that aims to enhance defense capabilities with the alliance. We know that this package was endorsed in 2014, and after that, at the Warsaw Summit, the allies welcomed the progress made in implementing the substantial NATO-Georgia package. During that time, the allies enhanced its focus on security in the Black Sea region on the one hand, and on the other hand, the allies encouraged Georgia to continue effective implementations of all existing tools to come closer to the alliance. At the Brussels summit, the parties adopted joint declaration. According to this declaration, we have all practical tools for the membership, in particular, NATO-Georgia Commission, the Georgian annual national program, and of course, the substantial NATO-Georgia package. During that time, the allies appreciated Georgia's support for its NATO missions and operations, its contribution to NATO response versus its significant contribution to resolute support mission. We know that Georgia made a distinguished contribution to transatlantic security as a non-member state of the alliance among the member states of NATO. Our brave soldiers, together with our partners, are maintaining international peace and security. To deepen NATO-Georgia cooperation, in April 2020, at the online meeting, NATO foreign ministers made a very significant decision about new measures that include enhancement of cooperation against hybrid threats, increasing Georgia's involvement in NATO exercises in the Black Sea region, as well involvement of Georgia in the Black Sea Airspace Data Exchange Regional Program. This decision clearly illustrated that regardless of coronavirus pandemic, the issue of Georgia remains on the agenda of the alliance. If we analyze the enlargement process, it has clearly illustrated that enlargement process brings security and stability to regions and countries. And this means that NATO should remain a very important instrument for Western strategy in the Black Sea region. The Black Sea is becoming the crossroads of high-value trade, and it figures in the geography of critical energy pipelines to Europe and world markets. This issue is crucial for the concept of Europe whole, free, and at peace, because the Black Sea security, the Black Sea region, whole and free, is an integral part for the European architecture. And in this regard, Georgia is a reliable partner due to the following reasons. Firstly, Georgia has made a very important progress in terms of democratic transition and good governance. Today's voting and the final adoption of constitutional amendments have clearly illustrated that we have taken a very important step toward the parliamentary pluralism for the 2020 parliamentary elections. We have done it, and this will enhance our democracy. Of course, this means that we are an example of the reforms for other countries in this region. Secondly, Georgia has a very important progress in the Euro-Atlantic integration process, showing the strong commitment of Georgian people toward the shared values. Georgia has almost 900 troops now in the framework of NATO Resolute support mission, making it the largest non-NATO contributor to the NATO training missions. And this means that Georgia will continue to contribute to the European security together with our partners for achieving common goals. And finally, Georgia's location makes it important for NATO. Georgia sits at a crucial geographical and cultural crossroads, and it's strategically important for economic and military reasons. Georgia offers its infrastructure and other logistic capabilities for the transit of NATO forces. And therefore, my key message, today's key message is the following. 12 years promise of the Bucharest summit should be accelerated. But when we talk about the context of the integration process, I would like to analyze the finding document as a lawyer, because we know that finding document, I mean, the North Atlantic Treaty is as well binding document. And according Article 10 of the North Atlantic Treaty, the parties may invite any European country if it is committed to the principles of the alliance and if it contributes to the security of the North Atlantic area. Georgia has demonstrated that it's committed to the principles of the alliance on the one hand, and on the other hand, it substantially contributes to the European security. Key for achieving our goal is in the capitals of all members of the alliance, because alliance consists of sovereign states, and this means that they make decisions independently. They granted membership to European countries several times, including the former Soviet republics, I mean the Baltic states, and I hope that they will give such a historical opportunity to Georgia as well. In this regard, I would like to highlight that the United States is a stronger supporter of the full NATO membership for Georgia. The US-Georgia relationship cooperation, of course, cooperation highlights. We have a security cooperation framework, for example, which aims to develop readiness and sustainable capabilities, and as well as modernization of the Georgian defense forces. In the last years, we conducted the joint exercises on the territory of Georgia. Expansion of the joint exercises and development of maritime infrastructure will enhance the Black Sea security. At the London summit, NATO Secretary General highlighted there is now more NATO in Georgia than ever before. These positive messages and dynamics of NATO-Georgia cooperation indicate that we can accelerate this process. Georgia deserves membership in NATO. More NATO in Georgia and more Georgia in NATO will not only enhance Georgia's development, but also it will enhance Black Sea and Western security. Thank you.
Thank you, Khatuna. Thank you so much indeed. So that you summed up the latest developments, which is very helpful when we are speaking about the onward developments. There's a there are many issues where we can theorize when speaking about the Black Sea region security. But again, let me be as practicable in my questions as possible. So I'll go first to you, Luke. And my very right to the point questions are, there is a perception or perhaps misperception on the Georgian side that when we're speaking about the eastern flank of the alliance, there is certain disbalance between the Baltic and the Black Sea. And getting back to the point, and I very much like an idea which came across recently. It was saying about sort of, if I'm correct in my recollections, one flank, one interest, one threat, and I very much like it. And then my question to you, what are those steps which could transform the tailored forward presence on the Black Sea to the same modality which the Baltics have, which is enhanced forward presence? That's one question. And the second question, by sort of, not towards the time, we spoke about the Montreux Convention and various limitations. Of course, I'm very far from the view that the boots on the ground could always decide the matter, but of course, the physical presence, of course, matters in the region, especially when we speak about the great powers competition. So, in terms of the Montreux Convention, what is your assessment of the announced Istanbul Channel? How doable is that? And what could be an impact for an access by the Black Sea states, the warships to the Black Sea, and their more continued and more regular presence? So those two questions, Luke, and your responses very appreciated.
Thank you, Victor. I'll take them in reverse order. So on the first one about the proposed Istanbul Canal and the impact on the Montreux Convention, there's been a lot of speculation about this in the media. Even I've read some unnamed Turkish officials saying that this proposed canal might not fall under the restrictions of Montreux. But I don't see how this could be the case, because to get to the Black Sea, you have to transit the Turkish Straits, and that's plural. There are two straits, the Dardanelles and the Bosphorus. Now, the proposed Istanbul Canal will get you around the Bosphorus. You won't have to transit the Bosphorus, but you still have to transit the Dardanelles. So that, in my opinion, would still fall under the restrictions of Montreux. Perhaps I'm missing something here, because there's been so much talk about this, but there are still two straits, and the Istanbul Canal only gets you around one of the two straits. And then in your first question, Victor, you're absolutely right. If there is a perception in Georgia that there's an imbalance inside the alliance about the force posture in Southeast Europe compared to Northeast Europe, you're absolutely right. And this is something that's been slowly getting fixed with more presence on the ground in Romania and Bulgaria, with the increased rotational forces of fighter jets to Romania in particular. But early on, whenever the forward enhanced presence concept was developed, at the Warsaw Summit, I think it was, right then was the main threat from Russia was still seen to be in the Baltic region, Ukraine and north, basically, not Ukraine and south. But since then, the situation has evolved, and I think Russia has demonstrated a threat to the whole flank. And for sure, NATO needs to do more. It has been doing more. I think it needs to do a better job at advertising what it has been doing. One proposal I've had in the past is having training exercises that, let's say you have a training exercise, NATO exercise take place in Romania. Will you include NATO members from the Baltics. You include NATO members from Northern Europe purposely. So it forces them to leave their geographical comfort zone to go to another region of the alliance. And it helps the military planners, it helps the officers, it even helps the soldier on the ground have a better appreciation for the security challenges in that region. And I think there can be more of that. And there's an even bigger divide inside NATO between East and South. So the Mediterranean states, Spain, Italy, they view the security challenges a lot differently compared to Estonia and Norway, for example. So we have to do a lot there, I think. But some things have been done. We just need to focus more on building on these things. One idea I've had for Georgia was since Georgia has contributed troops to the NATO response force in the past and contributed to NATO operations in Afghanistan and other places, maybe Georgia could contribute some forces to the US-led Forward Enhanced Presence Battalion in Poland. It would be the first time that a non-NATO country would contribute to any of the 4 battalions, and the framework, the Forward Enhanced Presence Battalions, one in the 3 Baltic states, each of the 3 Baltic states, and one in Poland. I picked Poland because the U.S. and Georgia already have that very close military-to-military relationship, and the U.S. is the framework nation for the battalion in Poland. And I'm not talking about large numbers of troops. Even something like at the company level would, I think, send an important message that not only is Georgia worried about Black Sea security, but Georgia is also worried about NATO security, Europe's security as a whole. So that's just an idea to throw out on that issue.
Thank you. That is very helpful to sound out your view. Thank you, Luke. So, Ambassador, my question: you mentioned that the Black Sea historically has been the geography of the balance of powers. That if I recall correctly, that's a statement you made. So in these days, when Black Sea, it's not just a geography, but it's a sort of strategic depths for Russia, which considers Black Sea on one hand as an inbound entrance point, and on another side as an outbound entrance point by getting access to Mediterranean, North Africa, etc., etc. That's the reality on one side, and on other side, the requirement for sort of for more united response by the allies in the Black Sea region. Let me say another way. Do you think that hybrid order could somehow be reconfigured and could be put on the track? So how do you see any prospects for reconciling those clashes of interest, or this is sort of the story of the eternity, if you will? So what is your view?
Very good question. Russia today has quite enough power to somehow manage situation on the ground, on the equatorial or the Black Sea, according to their will. Especially after they developed these military capabilities, modernized their armed forces after Georgian-Russian war. And they are always relying on the force. But today, situation slowly is changing. Nuclear weapons are not anymore those decisive ones to pursue adversary, and especially after the end of May, Americans tested laser weapons and they shut down UAV from the military ship. And this makes very interesting developments on the ground. When nuclear weapons are not more that important after the laser weapons are going to be developed, as well as economic situation, especially this COVID developments in the world and impact of the COVID pandemic on economy, falling prices of oil, and so on and so forth, falling businesses, economic recession. That makes situation quite different before it was. And if before this big crisis and before this advanced laser weapons creation by Americans, situation was different and now is different, and bargaining will be more easy, let's say so, to convince Russia with its ambitions rather than it was before the crisis. And I think that in the future this economic crisis impacts on Russia will rise, let's say constantly, as well as this nuclear power will be reduced. I mean, meaning of the nuclear power. And I think that the bargaining will be easier in the future, and it depends on the window of opportunity, let's say so. Technically, Georgia is ready for NATO membership, absolutely. Even readier than some others. I don't want to name. And only political decision is going to be right, let's say so. Some European allies which are hesitant in this direction might be changed their minds when they discover that they are not that much dependent on hydrocarbons anymore, and clean technologies are arriving, and then leverages from the Russian side are going to be reduced. It depends on the developments on in the future, but my opinion is that Russia will become more flexible than today.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. Thank you. So I'm doing some cherry picking exercise in terms of asking questions, because that's really very broad topic. But still I'm constrained, by the timing considerations. And by the way, I promised Luke that they will fit into 1 hour. So, I should keep my promise. And therefore, the very last question goes to the lady. And very quick response, Khatuna, as much as you can. So please show all your talents. So you mentioned the 12 years promise of the Bucharest summit should be delivered. In your view, to what extent it's possible to implement the decision? Extremely complex question, but as much precise response as you could, please. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I would like to emphasize that on the one hand, it depends on political will of all members of the alliance, and on the other hand, on progress made by Georgia. But the key issue is how to convince the skeptical countries that we can accelerate this process. In order to achieve this goal, we need to highlight Georgia's importance for the alliance more intensively and deepen our communication with all members of the alliance. But at the same time, we need to take into consideration that the geopolitical context, with the inclusion of Turkey, Bulgaria, and Romania in NATO family, the alliance has encircled half of the Black Sea. The other half cannot be ignored. This issue is crucial for the concept of a Europe whole and free and at peace. Thank you so much.
I absolutely agree with you, because otherwise the policy on the Black Sea by the alliance would be very much lopsided, and they would lose out of the sight, very vital interests, and that the persistence and sort of the consistency should be pursued. So, thank you so much indeed. So, honestly, I mean, I was supposed to raise, many other questions like, China's impact or transactionality of the Western policies, grand strategy or emerging, etc., etc. Unfortunately, we have to keep our word. So, this very brief mental exercise hopefully was interesting for the audience. It once again demonstrated that Georgia, in the first instance, is punching well above the weight. So, in that respect, may I just humbly observe, and diplomatically, that, of course, it's a pity. A pity is not to suffer, but wasting to suffer. So, we're suffering, as much as we could, but obviously, we're well in the position to expect, some very tangible results, because this is the two-way street, and the situation on the ground does not allow, for much latitude in the thinking. So more proactivity and more courage, I should say, should be required, from our partners. That's our expectation, that's our request, and that's our request. So thank you so much indeed. Thank you in the first instance to Luke. Thank you that we found time, and in view of many questions which we did not touch on, hopefully we'll get together again, rather sooner than later. So thank you, Ambassador. Thank you for your contribution. Thank you, Khatuna, and thank you for our guests, and viewers. So we'll meet next time. On behalf of Geocase, I wish you a very pleasant evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye.